This program is brought to you by Emory University.
All right, let me welcome you all. We are here to participate in one of Emory's creativity conversations. To give you a little bit of an idea what to expect, and so I don't mess it up, let me quote from the websites. Creativity conversations feature Emory scholars and distinguished guests sharing ideas that contribute to a broader understanding of the arts and sciences in the world today. Arts and sciences. Today, for the first time, we're here to talk about creativity in business. Now, this is not a completely foreign concept. According to my colleague, Jill Perry-Smith, who I saw out there, creativity in business refers to the ability to come up with unique and yet appropriate ideas and solutions within businesses. Charlie Getz, who teaches entrepreneurship here on campus, would probably add the ability to come up with unique yet appropriate ideas and solutions for starting new businesses. These are powerful ideas that refer to how we might use creativity within existing business models and business frameworks. Now, last year, Richard Sandor, the founder and chairman of the Chicago Climate Exchange, stood here and remarked out loud that when we think about innovation, we think about entrepreneurship and creativity in business schools, we almost always think marketing and manufacturing. But for some reason, people, when they start thinking finance, they don't think about innovation and creativity in finance. So we innovate on the two dimensions, but we don't go creative on the third. And he was lamenting that that kind of imbalance is kind of a shame when you think of all the different things that finance and financing can do. Well, today's conversation, I'm sure, will definitely address this kind of imbalance. Very, very pleased to introduce to you all Bob Pattillo, founder and chief executive officer of Goizueta Ventures. This intro, I apologize in advance, will probably not be completely accurate. In 2003, Bob sold a 53-year-old real estate investment business to focus solely on impact investing. He worked in microfinance, where he and the organization, Goizueta Ventures, that he founded, responsible for a number of innovations in the field of microfinance. First secondary market and microfinance equity, first employee stock ownership plans, and MFIs. Not satisfied and realized that the impacts could be both broader and deeper, moved over to investments in other enterprises. Some would call social enterprises, some would call impact enterprises, serving low communities in developing countries. Google, look up something called Cell Bazaar in Bangladesh, D-Light Design in India and Tanzania, and the Indian School Finance Company in India. I can sum up my reactions to Bob and his work, I've met him a couple of times outside this venue, with 3 words. Nobody does that. So I remember the first time that we had lunch together, I almost quit my job. By the end of lunch, nobody walks away from a thriving real estate investment firm to become the single largest MFI investor in the world. Nobody stands up and puts several $100,000 of your own dollars into a room and asks a series of entrepreneurs, decide amongst yourselves, right, who should get this investment. Nobody does that. And yet these are just the kind of actions with creativity and acumen to back them up that produce large-scale and lasting social changes. The kind of things that we like to talk about. So as this creativity conversation unfolds, I invite all of us to reflect in this context how creativity in Bob's world refers to this unique and appropriate combination of a strong social orientation on the one hand, coming together with sound finance and business acumen. I think the coming together piece, right, is the platform that we want to talk about. Of course, every conversation requires 2 participants. All right? And so in this regard, I'm delighted to welcome Rosemary Magee. Dr. Magee is Vice President and Secretary of Emory University. Before that, served for 2 decades, I'm told, as Dean at Emory College. I went on again to the Creativity Dialogue site and started looking at some of the videos that have been archived. By my account, you've participated in 15 creativity conversations so far with the likes of Margaret Atwood, and I have to mention that because it's Canadian, Jimmy Carter, and Salman Rushdie. We are indeed proud to be the 16th. So before I turn the floor over, just a reminder, this is indeed going to be the 16th videotaped creativity conversation. So if those that kind of pop up early perhaps, and leave, let's see if we can protect the integrity of the film by making that so. So I now turn the floor over to Dr. Magee and Bob.
Right. Thank you so much, Peter, for that great introduction. Thanks so much, Bob, for being here, and thanks to all of you for participating in this creativity conversation with us. And the idea behind it is really to ignite that spark of creativity that exists in each of us. And so sometimes by hearing other people's stories, we can find that place, that moment, that idea that we want to pursue ourselves or think about or talk with friends about. And it turns out that one of the indicators for creativity among people is frequently, you say, where did this idea come from? Well, you know, I had a conversation with a colleague or with a friend or with a family member. It comes out of that sort of dialogue. And so let's just talk about where your creative ideas have come from. I consider them to be creative. Peter does, and I think other people do as well. And you've made a pretty interesting, exhilarating journey in your life and change, transformation. So where did that germ of that idea come from for you, Bob?
Well, I was shooting pool with a banker in the basement of a hotel.
So it was a conversation, right?
Yeah,
okay.
and there was some beer involved.
Okay, right.
Yeah. And the banker was Stephen Rockefeller, and I said, I was just kind of like, wow, you know. And I said, so what are you working on that you're really enjoying? And he was leaning over a shot like this, I can still remember, and then he put the cue down, and he started telling me about microfinance. And I was like, wow.
How long ago was this?
This would have been 97, something around 97, 98. And I said, Steve, I don't understand what you just said, but I want some of what's on your face. And I saw joy, and it was professional joy. And I said, gosh, that'd be cool to really, you know, be able to enjoy your work in that way. So I started a
Did you
journey.
know anything about microfinance at that point?
Not a lick. Not a lick, but I started, and I'm sort of an experiential learner. And so I ended up investing in, it was like a ready, fire, aim kind of thing. You know, hey, well, okay, here's a let's just an opportunity to get started. And I invested in a fund that was hosted by Deutsche Bank.
Right.
And ended up sitting on the board and just learning as much as I could. And then quickly realized that I wasn't going to truly appreciate this until I saw it in the field. And so I took a microfinance trip all the way around the world. Made about 7 stops. Saw Palestinian microfinance, Egypt, Yemen, Calcutta, 3 different microfinance banks in Bangladesh, including Dr. Yunus's. I got to meet Dr. Yunus. And that was really the transformation. That's when I was like, real estate.
And you were still active in real estate?
I was. At that time, well, we were, I'd say active. We were the 8th largest industrial developer in the United States.
That's pretty active.
Yeah. You know, come on.
Yeah.
And but I tried to do both for the longest time, both microfinance and real estate, and realized I couldn't do both well. And it was actually, this is kind of a strange story, but I was actually in church in the little meeting area, you know, where you huddle beforehand, and I was holding my daughter's hand. She was 12 at the time, and a stranger came up and said, "So, you know, you're a member here, and what do you like?" And you know, and then he said, "Well, what do you do?" And I'm like, about to open my mouth, and my daughter, whoop, pops up, and she goes, "Oh, he's in microfinance. He makes small handshake loans, mostly to women in the developing world, and you know the repayment rate is quite good." And I really came to understand that I could be in real estate, you know, for the rest of my life. And I had taken my kids to construction sites and shown them these huge warehouses full of chocolate, or you know, something like really I thought was cool. And they're like, "Okay, great, Dad," you know, and then that was it. But when I talked about microfinance, you know, over the dinner table, I don't know whether it resonated something, you know, in them, or whether they could just see my joy on my face. but I quickly realized that I was probably had a better chance of being a better father if I chose microfinance as a profession as opposed to real estate. And you know, if I hung on to that, then the rest became easier. You know, it was a huge social transformation. You know, in terms of you know, my own identity.
Right.
My family's been in the real estate business forever. The Clifton warehouse, we built that. You know, I was just like, everywhere you go, you know, my father especially, you know, has done some really amazing things, and I could have done that for the rest of my life, and probably been happy, but not ultimately fulfilled.
So what is it about the work that you find so fulfilling? What is the quality in the work itself? What draws you to it, and what entices you to put even more energy and invest greater resources in it?
Well, I always think of a calling as having two parts. And I'm not talking about necessarily a religious calling. I'm just talking about something that, a profession that is very compelling. You know, that makes your nostrils start flaring. Okay, how does it work? I think there is a internal experience, just some reflection and understanding what your purpose is, and in what ways the things you aspire to. But there's also an external call, and as you begin to experience and pilot things, and you know, you got to do a lot of listening and be real honest about how useful your ideas really are. And that's an iterative process. But I do think it's useful to think about, you know, am I moving both of those, you know, at the same time?
Now, when you tell us a bit about how your whole operation works, you know, how you come up with the ideas, what you do with the ideas, how you finance the ideas. Give us an idea of how the whole thing works together. Okay.
Well, Peter did a great job. He got it like 97%
okay,
right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and say the one part that's a little different. I am not CEO of Goizueta Ventures anymore. I'm an entrepreneur, and it has grown to the point where we've got about 80 people, and it's really outgrown my management capability. And you know, but what that is, what Goizueta Ventures is it's an impact investment management company. It is a commercial enterprise. We do believe that a for-profit business is the way to have the most social impact, to be able to take those profits and redeploy them into the edgiest stuff. You know, retained earnings are a great way to have funds that you can control, to invest in research or human capital or new product development. And you know, you're putting your own skin in the game that way. So we are committed to that approach. It started in microfinance, and at one point we were the largest private investor in microfinance equity in the world. That's really a statement about the size of the sector. I'm not trying to brag. It was really a small sector, and most of it was eaten up with World Bank funds and public sector investors. And as a way of one checkpoint in whether the calling was good, I was sitting on a board with a bunch of public sector investors, and I won't name names, okay? Well-meaning, you know, hard-working, very bright people. But we got into a 20-minute argument about whether Turkey was in Asia or Europe. And I'm like, what does this have to do with value
Did you figure
creation?
it out?
Yeah, I just like checked out. It's like, I don't care. Is it the question is Turkey a good market to invest in? Are there people that we can trust there? Is there a regulatory environment that's conducive to investment? Can you find good loan officers to train? These are the questions that matter. So I knew I didn't want to co-invest with a lot of public sector folks. So we ended up staying private. We did, I'll say, spin off our microfinance activity, our investment group, and that is about a $120 million fund based in New York and London. It's called the Global Microfinance Equity Fund, GMEF. They actually have two pension fund investors. Part of what I'd love to talk with you all about is the need for human capital in this sector, and for those who may be graduating at some point and looking for jobs, to encourage you to say you can make a living in this and be well paid and find that joy.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. What advice do you have to students in particular, but also people who are just starting out in their careers in terms of this whole arena? Because you're a person who became self-educated in it, right?
Yeah, it was hard.
Right, yeah. I imagine it was hard. And then in addition...
lonely.
Right.
I mean, being from the South, it's not a lot of awareness. You have to go to Geneva or San Francisco or, to even see where the hot stuff is going on.
So you had to create, in academic terms, we'd call that a directed study, your own directed study or your self-directed study to pursue this. And how did you do that? I'll get back to the advice in a second. I'm just kind of curious about how did you know how to do that?
It was mainly finding people that I respected and just picking their brains. It's more of those conversations.
Right.
I remember one was with Michael Chu, who was the president of Axion at the time, which is a mostly Latin microfinance network. I remember it so distinctly because he was about 45 minutes into the conversation, and his aide came in, knocked on the door, and said, "You've got a call." He said, "No, I want to stay focused here." They said, "Well, it's the president of Nicaragua." And he goes, "I guess I better take that." But one of the things about impact investing is it's way more collegial than the real estate business, than conventional finance. So much of conventional capitalism is, it's the Shark Tank. It is dog eat dog, and people like that. And to the extent they get a good idea, boy, they want to exploit it. And they want to really hog it and run with it. And the impact investment arena is not like that. It is every bit as competitive, I will say, in terms of wanting to do something very useful. But the difference is if I can share an idea with you, and you get excited about it, then maybe we can partner on something. Or maybe you become my exit strategy. Or who knows, maybe you'll take my idea and do something better with it and serve a whole bunch of clients in a whole different, Morocco versus India. Because that's where it starts. It starts with care and having a deep, strong feeling for the clients that you're trying to serve. And if you can do that and do that well, terrific. If there are other people that can do that well, then you want to encourage them.
So a key component for it sounds like is the whole idea of collaboration, being collaborative to achieve common goals or a mission. And it's some of the things that you've told me about before when we've talked before it sounds like that's how the way you've tried to structure the way your firm works as well. So that the individuals in it, you told me I think once about the kind of name or nickname or title or something or other, the Inkler, coming up with ideas, right? The Inklings. Yeah. Is that right? Have I remembered that properly? Yeah, so talk a little bit about Inklings, what you mean by Inklings.
Okay, yeah, I didn't finish that. if I'm not CEO, what am
Oh,
I?
okay, right,
Yeah,
okay.
because then that, and I guess that's as good a description, although I'm sure I'm blushing now. You know, because I'm insanely curious, I do a ton of traveling, and I do have a ton of conversations. And sometimes you don't know where the idea comes
Right.
from, whether it's someone else's or yours, just sparked by, you know, an environment. And it usually doesn't matter, right? You know, people are happy for you to, you know, borrow those and try to do something with it.
Right.
So that's kind of my job now, is to be on that creative edge and let the main blocking and tackling of building an industry. It's going to be an asset class, and really microfinance is already. SKS, some of you maybe have been following that in the Wall Street Journal, went public about 3 months ago, is that right? Something like that, raised $400 million. And that's the 4th IPO in microfinance across the world, and it is the wave of the future. You know, the commercial markets are coming in. You've got pension funds with huge allocations to microfinance. So, you know, as that matures, you know, I'm trying to go further out on the edge. And so one of the things we've done, one of the inklings that we had, we did some research on these affordable private schools. First, we found them in India, in Hyderabad. A guy named James Tooley did the research, won a Templeton Prize for it. And basically, the public schools in India for the poor are so bad that the teacher absenteeism rate is about 50%. So you don't even have a teacher in the classroom. Okay, so for these private schools that only charge $4 or $6 or $8 a month in tuition, that's their hurdle to beat. Okay, and when you look at it that way, it says, okay, maybe it is possible to run a better school on those very scarce resources. They get no support from the government. But these are large schools, 800 students, 1,000, 1,200 students, you know, all the way from kindergarten on up through high school. And the quality is good. The test scores are good. The teacher retention is good. There's plenty of room for improvement. But what we found is that there's no source of capital other than retained earnings. You know, they would make a little bit of spread, you know, on their revenue, and that would be their only way that they could finance growth in the business. And so it would take a long time to you know, build a new wing of classrooms. And so we said, well, what if, I mean, your cash flow is terrific. Your students come to school every day and pay every month. What if we loaned you, you know, money to build you know, 2 wings of classrooms at the same time, you know, double your capacity and repay that. And so we're in the middle of a huge experiment, determined to make it work in Hyderabad. We've been up and making loans about 19 months now. We've made 170 loans, average of about $30,000 a piece. Jury's still out.
And the loans go directly to?
Usually we loan to the school owner, the proprietor,
Okay.
and he or she will invest that into the schools. Technically, schools in India are supposed to be for profit,
Right.
or not for profit, right? Okay, so so the proprietor is the borrower. So it's a huge experiment as to whether or not it is it's, you know, a viable product type or a viable enterprise. But our dream is there's 80,000 of these schools in India. 62% of the kids in Hyderabad go to these schools as opposed to the public schools. So it is a movement. And then as we began to research this, we found that Pakistan's the same way. There are 90,000 in Pakistan, Ghana, Kenya. Incredible, well-run schools, but very quietly, one at a time, run by entrepreneurs. And so what we're hoping is that we can partner with microfinance banks who can be the hands and feet, and that they can take their loan officers and go and make these loans to the schools, and then we can be a wholesale investor rather than having to originate the loans.
So how do you assess your success?
Well, that's a good question. I started with philanthropic dollars. I didn't even dream that you could make money in the beginning.
So your original idea was you were just going to donate funds to do something good and important and interesting in the world.
Yep, and the whatever we donated to would then invest it. And we felt like if any of that came back, well, great, you get to do it again.
Right.
Okay, so
you didn't have huge expectations.
Correct. And so the return of capital, or most of it, would have been a goal. And I realized I was selling the industry short. It was really when I was sitting with a woman in Bangladesh, one of the micro entrepreneurs, and I asked the question, what are some of your dreams? And she was about 27 years old. She'd been a borrower for about 3 years. And she started talking about her dreams for her children, and then her dreams for her relationship with her husband, that she would become more of a peer in that relationship and have more of a say in family decisions. And she really thought, gosh, that the community needed a new water line, and that was something that she hoped she and some of her other micro-entrepreneurs could convince, the powers that be to do. And she really felt like that Bangladesh had a lot more to offer the world, that they'd been, considered a lowly country for a long time and scorned for that. And she thought that the Bangladeshi people have more to offer this planet than what they were doing already. And then she says, well, what are your dreams? And it hit me, that I have the same dreams that she does, really, a slightly different format, but, dreams for my children and dreams for my family and my community and my country and my world. And in seeing that she was accessing these dreams through her work, through borrowing money and having someone trust her with $50 to take that and put it to work in her business, it was lifting her up into a way that she wasn't having to focus on survival. She could focus on thriving, and she could, and this is where the financial capital, you start to realize, is secondary. It is really the human capital that is the most powerful. The power of intellectual, your imagination, trustworthiness, your courage. And this isn't like a 10% return. This is a 10 times return. This woman, I met a lot of first-time borrowers who would really weep, when they first got that $50, and they couldn't even imagine, what next, but they got started, and then after a while they come, it's usually a 6-month cycle. So the loan officer comes back and the person's repaid the loan, and they're like, okay, I think we can talk about another one. Let's bump it to $60, and there's a little bit of a boost in confidence, and then next one it's 80 and it's 100, and then about the 4th or 5th cycle, you see a total change in dynamics. You see the borrower going, I got work to do. Okay, can we make this a little faster? And I've been a good credit for a long time. So can we talk about this interest rate? I really think that I'm a good credit and my loan size, and you really could come by monthly. You don't really have to come by weekly, and so that'll save you some time. And and so you're getting a huge feedback loop on your products and services that nonprofits, and I'm still on that topic about is a nonprofit the way to go to create value for social impact, or a for-profit. But that for-profit has got to cover their costs, and if they come up with a product that they can't roll out and people will pay for, then guess what? They don't sell them. Ross, thank you. this is about the 5th generation of a D-light. This is a, would it be so bold to see if we could turn the lights out?
Sure, we'll do anything. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I mean, I assume you can turn the
Would
lights
that-
out
would
of the
that mess
business school.
everything
Yeah.
Well, I haven't tested this, so
Uh-oh.
are we going to do them all, or? We can do it with just. It's pretty powerful though. There we go.
This is the coolest creativity conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. In the dark. And light.
All right. One of those is the high setting. This replaces a kerosene lantern. To read by, for kids to study. I had a Nigerian driver one time said, "Oh, if only we had those growing up." He said, "My food always tasted like kerosene because my mom would be stirring the pot and she'd be leaning over, to see if it was ready, and the kerosene would, we had to eat it because we didn't have any other food, right?" One man, we can probably turn the lights back on.
Now, does it heat up too, or is it
No,
just
no,
a light? Just a
no.
light.
One man said in one customer, he says, "Oh, I want 2 of those." And he says, "Because I can get the bugs out of my food." It's like, yeah, that's pretty good. This is a solar panel here, and this is a phone charger here. So you just stick it in the light, and in, I don't know, about 6 hours it charges up, and then you can operate it for 4 hours on a bright charge or 8 hours on a medium charge.
So how much does something like that cost?
$10. Still want to get the price down, but that pays for itself in kerosene savings in about, depending on the price of kerosene, about 3 months. It takes a little longer in India because the government subsidizes kerosene. Mm-hmm. They tax the solar panel, but they subsidize the kerosene. Now, how backwards is that?
Right.
The reason we were talking about creativity, mm-hmm. and the process of taking this to market and letting customers experiment with it was their way forward. What these 2 kids from Stanford, their original concept looked more like Christmas tree lights. This is what they thought that people needed to light their homes, and it was a good start. But the next, the customer said, that just doesn't work. And the next one was big. It was like this, and it was powerful, but it was, it was too bulky. Mm-hmm. And then they got to this. No telling where it's headed after this. But it's the customer feedback and the co-creation. That's what I call it.
Right.
That that dynamic of people that are saying, if I'm going to shell out my $10 for this, it well better work and work well.
So what's your relationship to this device?
We help start the company, mm-hmm. As an investor.
Mm-hmm. And that's an American company?
It's based, I mean, it's legally incorporated mm-hmm. in the United States. They have manufacturing in China, and most of their sales distribution is in India right now, and then in Tanzania and other parts of Africa. We sit on the board. We've helped, we would consider ourselves an engaged investor. Mm-hmm. It's not a passive thing. We show up to the board meetings. Arun Gore is at the board meeting tomorrow in Hong Kong. And we've helped lead follow-on capital rounds. So that it's a coordinated, help recruit other investors to it. The last one was about a $5 million round. I think it was a B or C round. Some of you equity guys will have to. I don't know all my jargon here because I'm from the real estate business. Remember that, okay? So cut me a little slack, but so that's our role, and we would help them. A lot of the entrepreneurs, like me, are good for like 5 years, 7 years, and then the thing outgrows them, mm-hmm. and they want to move on and become serial entrepreneurs. They want to start the next enterprise, and we would back this team again in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm. So that's one way you measure success in terms of what you do. That is something that you would reinvest in, recommit to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Scale is huge. They've reached about 1 million people with these lamps already. I mean, it can be the best idea, but if it ain't getting that last mile and in people's hands and using, forget about it. I mean, it can't sit on the shelf. This was actually chosen by the British Museum as one of the top 50 inventions in the history of mankind.
Wow.
A LED lantern.
Well, talk a little bit about, in order to, have these really successful outcomes, you have to make mistakes too. There have to be failures. There have to be disappointments. And give us some examples of those as well. What went wrong?
Oh.
Yeah, or an example.
Do I have to?
Sure. I mean, especially for the students. I mean, part of the research
boy.
on creativity shows that you're willing to make mistakes or have disappointments or things not turn out.
Setbacks.
Okay.
I'm not even going to
Okay.
call them, we're not
Mistake.
done yet.
Okay.
All right.
How about some setbacks?
Okay. Dozens and dozens. Oh, gosh.
Well, just give us one glorious one.
Okay. Young guy that ran a construction company in Phoenix had an idea and went in business with his cousin, who had just graduated from Notre Dame Business School. And as a class project, they wanted to see if they could make an affordable home out of a shipping container. Okay? They started the company's PFNC, Porfan Nuestra Casa. And I thought it was spectacular. Mm-hmm. And we put up, I think, $300,000 or $400,000 to help them start a pilot. First, they were looking at Juarez, Mexico. A lot of the factory workers in the border towns, believe it or not, even though they're paid $1.80 an hour, live in boxes, right? And there's no secure place to, for their kids or for your possessions, and it gets bulldozed, and you're having to steal electricity and water and all these things. And they really have pretty good jobs, in terms of by Mexican standards, okay? And they could afford to buy these shipping container homes were, I think it was $11,000 a piece furnished for a two-bedroom home. That includes clear title to land. And the Mexican government had a great financing scheme where you could, I can't remember the term of the mortgage, but it ended up being about $48 a month. Okay, so it was really about 10% of the of the income of the folks. That was perfectly workable.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Okay, now let's see here. Boy, where did it go wrong? We proposed a pilot in Tijuana, and where land prices were really expensive, and just so they could go up and do about eight levels. And the entrepreneur was excited about it, but he wanted to fund a 500-unit complex all at one time. And that would have been, I don't remember the math, but it was more than we wanted to invest. So we said, build 50, and let's just make sure that
the pilot idea, the pilot project idea.
Build 50 and make sure that, that people will buy these things, because, you picture sleeping in a shipping container, that's not a positive image, right? And so we know we can, paint them and, make them look good, but let's be sure that the customer will accept that. And he honestly refused. He says, I'm going to swing for the fence. We're going to do the 500 or not all. And so we got sideways.
So did you pull out at that point, or just?
We still have the money in. He's still trying to raise capital for the big piece, and we would become a minority investor in that enterprise. So it's a long shot at this point.
So in that way, it didn't succeed because the idea was kind of out of scale for what you felt you could successfully achieve.
Oh boy. I guess I could say this. I don't know if we did our homework fully on the entrepreneur. We assumed, having run a business, that he was an entrepreneur. I don't know if you've ever known any entrepreneurs, but they are nuts. They are relentless. They're really a pain in the butt to be around socially. And I'll put myself in that category. Because they're obsessive. you know, and they have this relentless determination to create something unique, and they're obsessive about it. They don't even really listen to other people really well.
Right.
Well, he didn't have that last bit of drive. You know, okay, I'll make 50 work. You know,
Right.
somebody hands in lemons, you know, you
figure it out.
You figure it out.
Right. Well, it sounds like one thing that needs to come together in what you do is both the inspiration of the idea, the dream itself, and also the practicalities, the research, the, you know, as they say these days, due diligence, you know, to really make sure all the pieces line up, are in alignment.
Well, this industry didn't exist 15 years ago, and many of the vehicles still don't exist.
Right.
You know, the basic, like one of the things we're trying to establish is a rating system for these affordable private schools in Hyderabad, where you can say, is this a good one? You know, are they investing in quality? You know, this kind of thing. Well, that has to be created.
Right.
You can research it to a point, but sooner or later, it really is an iterative process. You know, we're talking about, well, for instance, why haven't the big corporate, you know, Philips Electronics or GE or why haven't they gotten into this sector? You know, the Fortune at the bottom of the pyramid. I don't know if any of y'all read that book. Some of them are really trying hard. Nokia is probably one of the most successful, you know, in developing an affordable handset. But why haven't more? You know, if there's a 4 billion person market, and it's because, you know, that's what they do. They research, they research, they research,
Right.
they research, they research, and really, it's the entrepreneurs. Let's see if I'm out of. Sometimes I outrun my headlights, but there is a company now that has developed. I won't name the company, so I'll just name the product. It's a refrigeration unit for milk collection in remote rural areas. Okay, and so there's a corporation that is becoming a partner with them, but they're letting them do all the risk taking, right? And they might put some money up. UPS here in town has invested in some of the companies that we've invested here, but they recognize that the real creativity is in you know, that
Right.
try it mentality.
Right. So it really is the inspiration.
Let me interrupt here. I'm going to play kind of like host rules and kind of like an improv, you know, kind of partway through. I want to make sure that we spend a little bit of time at the end talking about another part of your business we haven't touched on too much yet, but this village capital you know, concept.
Ross is coming up too, right?
Right.
That's right, exactly. Village capital, just to let people know, it's an awesome offshoot or inshoot, if I get it right, of Grey Ghost Venture. Improves entrepreneurial success with social ventures, accelerates the impact investing space by building peer support organizations for entrepreneurs in cities throughout the world. Inspired by early finance micro-lending groups, and we talked about a little bit about that today, where entrepreneurs select the loan recipients from their own group. BillCap actually crowdsources the most investable companies, you know, for the investor partners. And as just slipped up here, Ross Baird is another gentleman I had a chance to know. An awesome guy, works closely with entrepreneurs to assist them in preparing for long-term financing, connects them with resources and knowledge they need to create strong business models, successful prototypes. Ross, well qualified, degrees from the University of Virginia, Oxford University, and along the way, through this, not only having spent time in the Education Project in India, but started a number of civic participation organizations as well. So, Ross, your job is to turn the conversation towards the village.
Yeah, so tell us what you do, Ross.
Well, I want to say, first of all, thank you very much for having me. One of the other reasons we wanted to touch on Village Capital is we've had the good fortune to collaborate with Emory on a couple of aspects of it. First of all, Peter is doing a very interesting study on the entrepreneurs that we're working with, their backgrounds, and Bob has this idea of, when he says this guy wasn't an entrepreneur. You know, we do, one inkling is, can you test for entrepreneurship? Can you look at traits from a person's background that will predict whether they're going to be a successful entrepreneur or not. And Peter has actually just published a paper on one of our pilots with entrepreneurs, outlining certain characteristics that predict success or not.
So tell us what Peter said in that paper.
Well, it's Peter was really, so the way the Village Capital program works is we have, we basically say we're going to commit a certain amount of investment, say $150,000 to a peer group of entrepreneurs. But the entrepreneurs are the ones who get to decide who gets the money. You guys will get together. You 12 entrepreneurs will go through a 12-week process. You'll look at each other's business plans, and then at the end you rank one another, and we invest in the top two. It's totally crazy to do it that way. But that's actually how a lot of early microfinance banks got started. There's this idea of the Village Bank, where you have, instead of making a $100 loan to a woman, you'll commit $1,000 to a group of 10 women, and the women will decide among themselves who gets the first loan, and they will not lend more money until the first loan is repaid. So this is an idea that Bob has had for about 5 years. Can you take this village banking concept up to the venture level? And Bob has been involved in groups like the YPO Forum, and I think we've all been involved in different types of peer support groups where you see this same dynamic, being in a group of...
It's your phone.
Oh, my phone is...
Somebody's trying to call you.
All right, well, we'll just move that over there. So can you take that peer support group to the venture level? So we tried this pilot with 4 groups. One with this group in Boulder, where they had 250 plus applicants from over 30 countries to participate in this entrepreneurial support program, and they went through a really interesting process. They would apply, first of all, and the 250 were narrowed to 50 finalists, and then the institute cost everyone $6,500, and they had to raise their own application fee. So they had to go to their friends, to their family, raising $25 at a time, but they also put it online. And anyone in the world could give to the entrepreneur. So what Peter found was he researched what is the background of the entrepreneur, what is a general demographic characteristic, and who are they likely to raise money from. So he found, on average, that women were more successful than men, just in general. And we've actually found, that's one of the lessons of microfinance, is that the world is really run by women. And putting your money in the hands of women is a much safer bet on average than putting it, right?
Yep.
So,
I'm in touch with my feminine side.
So first of all, women are better at managing money and being successful than men are. That was the first thing. The second thing was women did much, much better among people they knew, because when you gave money to this venture to support it, you indicated how you knew the entrepreneur. Women did much, much better among people they knew than men did, but women did worse among people that they didn't know than men did. So Peter's advice to a woman is, pretend like you're a man if you're raising money from strangers, but really, really go to your friends for money. So it's really, really interesting, and I think that you have to read Peter's paper to draw all kinds of conclusions. But I think the bottom line is we, through this Village Capital program, dealt with over 500 entrepreneurs from 40 plus countries. And we're learning a lot, and we're learning so much that we need to work with Emory Business School professors. And I see a couple of people from our Emory Business School team that we're working with. Raise your hands if you're here, Emory Business School team. We're learning a lot about how to support these entrepreneurs, how to raise more capital to help these entrepreneurs, and as Bob said, there's a lot of action in the industry, because there's just so many lessons to process.
So where is this all going? What's next? You've got these ideas, you've got the social capital, you've got the interest and the need in the world.
I think it really it's going in the direction of building communities. Mm-hmm. So the way that building communities that can foster this among themselves. So the way that we did Village Capital this year was we put up all the money worldwide. We did 4 pilots from New Orleans to India to this global one to the Bay Area.
And what's the general scale of that?
$50,000 to $100,000 per investment. Next year, starting in early next year, we're doing a pilot in the Bay Area where half the money is ours and half the money is a group of local angel investors. And the people who are running the program are not somebody that we contracted to do it, which we did this year, but a local incubator organization. And our goal for where that's going is after a couple of years, you have the local group running for it, local entrepreneurs and investors covering the cost, and local investors doing the investing, so that this type of innovation happens from people who already know each other, and we can move to another place and kickstart something else. So we have really shifted our focus in the Village Capital from trying to plant these communities ourselves to really trying to build local capacity for these groups to really support themselves in the long term.
You have anything you want to add to that, Bob?
Well, some of that's new information. So I'm listening mostly.
Is this a good time to maybe take some questions?
Yeah, I think so. I want to ask one additional question before we do that. Actually, two additional questions. And maybe this is for both Ross and Bob, because you're coming at it from different points in your life and from different perspectives. But what advice do you give to students who want to follow a creative path, such as your own, that melds together both really your dreams, your hopes and your dreams, and also your background, your education, your expertise? What's the advice that you have for students, in particular, or people just starting out in their careers?
All right, I did.
Or changing their careers.
Yeah, I did think about that. We have been approached by a lot of people about getting started. They're attracted. It seems interesting. What do I do next? And for the longest time, microfinance was our only sector, so we had a hard time saying you could get a job as a loan officer in Kenya, going street to street, making loans. It's really hard.
Right.
Okay. But in working with these schools, I could see where a intern would be safe, and but also have a clear view of a complete enterprise, and including the entrepreneur, and be mentored by that school proprietor. So we have created a fellowship, and we ran a pilot, and there are 11 fellows in Hyderabad as we speak. Each of the schools had that ranking, that rating that I was telling you about, the quality assessment, the parent engagement, these things, and they've come up with are coming up with ideas to how to improve the performance of that school in cooperation with the school proprietor, and it is amazing. We've already had 3 students say, this has changed my life, and I am going to do something different with my career because of this, this impact. They're only 2 months into a 9-month experience. We are trying to scale that to at least 50 fellows next year, and then if we can get some co-donors, if you will, to help us, then there's almost limitless capacity on the ground to place these fellows. And it's cheap. It's $6,500 for 11 months. And if you compare that to the Peace Corps, which is like $70,000 for 2 years, I mean, it's a real bargain. You're getting a person with, to have that experience. And so that's one way, I would,
experience.
That's right. Try to get some good field experience, really understanding from the grassroots up. The second is probably a little more personal, but if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that base thing is, like food and water and shelter, these things that we need. Okay, well, think of it as, instead of a pyramid, maybe like a silo. What if you could reduce what you really, if you made a list of the things that you want and the things that you need, move some of the stuff from the needs list to the wants list. And you don't have to have a new car every 5 years. I drive a 7-year-old Mini Cooper, okay, and it's doing great, right? And don't let the society tell you what you need, okay? And if you can do that, your options in terms of a fulfilling career are wide open. You know, that you can take more risk. You know, you can take sweat equity, shares in some of these, in D-Lite rather than salary. Okay, if you can do that, you know, you can get, that might be the difference between you getting the job and not. And this is going to be a very valuable company soon enough. You know, I would predict an exit in 2 years. Okay, so that's, you know, I know that's a little personal about, you know, it's not a judgment, but it's just creating an opportunity for yourself. And the third is this isn't just for students. Tons of mid-career people that we're seeing are saying, you know, I've either just sold a business or been laid off or for whatever reason. It isn't too late. It isn't too late to either be an entrepreneur and start a new business, or even better, to take some of that professional management experience to one of these entrepreneurial enterprises. These guys have hired two senior, one a marketing executive, one a manufacturing executive, that are way more talented and experienced than the founders. Okay, and they're not entrepreneurs in such that they need to feel the need to create the thing, but they are entrepreneurial, willing to work for an enterprise like this. And you know, they'll have 60 people working for them, right? And they can use the tactics that they learned, you know, working with Procter & Gamble, or you've got a friend that worked for Print Pack, David Kaguru, and he's going to move back to Kenya and you know, move his family and run a business in Kenya that's impacting the needs of others in this way. And so we're all still learning about
a lot of different avenues.
Exactly.
Right. There's not a single one. A lot of different avenues. You want to add anything to add to that, Ross, before we open it up?
Yeah, real quick, I would just stress what you said about getting in at the enterprise level. How I came to this was really interning for the Indian School Finance Company, and at that point I was set to go to law school just because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'm sorry if any of y'all are in law school. And Bob was visiting the company. He said, "You don't want to go to law school. You want to keep doing this type of thing." And really having getting in at the enterprise level. I mean, if you look at our team at First Light, we've got a guy who worked for ICICI Bank as a summer intern and draws on that experience. We got a guy who ran an education program in Latin America for 2.5 years. I mean, getting in at the enterprise level, particularly at the age of most of us in here, really, if you end up doing investing, it really teaches you a lot. So I would figure out which of these companies you want to work for and figure out what it's going to take to get them to take you on.
Yeah, just a little more on that. The guy that's taken my spot as CEO of Gregos Ventures is only 38. Okay. Why is he good at what he does? Is because he spent 6 years starting a microfinance bank in peri-urban, on really the slums of Mexico City, living, eating, breathing. You know, how do we create something that's of value to these residents? Okay, so he comes back. He goes to Haas Business School, and he is a hot property, buddy. I mean, he had job offers all over the world, and we were lucky to get him. Okay, so this can be a great career.
And just for you budding lawyers out there, even lawyers can do this too, right?
Even lawyers can do this too. I made the law school jab because our investment manager, John Hardman's a lawyer, and he always tells us what we're not allowed to do. So there's a lot of anti-lawyer sentiment in the entrepreneurial world, but we need you to keep us out of jail.
Okay, let's open it up for questions from the audience, and any of the topics that we've covered, addressed, or haven't addressed are open for discussion.
Yes.
So a lot of the microfinance, a lot of the things that you're doing seem to be applied in developing countries, helping people out of poverty, right? And giving them tools to be economic or self-sufficient. I'm wondering if you look at developed countries, specifically the United States, are there either, I guess, similarities or differences in terms of anything you've done you think can be applied to helping, as you were talking about income gaps growing and stuff like that, to help America's poor elevate themselves out of poverty?
You want to speak to like Idea Village in New Orleans and Drop the Chalk?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that one of the things that's a good question. We get it all the time. One of the things that we have found is, I think as we explore what's going on in the U.S., I think that these enterprise for-profit solutions to poverty are really not that common in the U.S. I mean, people in the U.S. think, I have my grant-making bucket and I have my investment bucket, and why would I ever try and do good with this money right here? We work, but we've been able to find exceptions and have really learned a lot from working with them. New Orleans is a hotbed of entrepreneurial activity. After the storm, there was this whole movement of business being able to rebuild the city, and there's an incubator, an entrepreneurial incubator called the Idea Village, whose goal is to build up businesses that can rebuild the city. And we ran one of our Village Capital pilots out of there last year, and actually right after this, we're headed down to New Orleans to kick off this go-round. And they're really interesting companies doing stuff right here in the U.S. One of our enterprises is called Drop the Chalk, and it's education software that measures student performance, student data, and instructs teachers on the right interventions to make based on how students are performing. And in the middle of the race to the top challenge grants and No Child Left Behind, and schools being so in the middle of data and performance tracking, this software is actually making a big difference. Now, this software is most applicable in the poorest schools in the country, where they have all these data collection requirements, and in a lot of these schools like KIPP schools that are really data-driven, culture-driven, and a lot of education reform in this country is revolving around problems that Drop the Chalk is really trying to help solve. So this is part of experimentation. When we first went down to New Orleans, there's no way there'd be anything here that we'd be interested in investing, but we've learned a ton just from putting feelers out there.
I told Ross, not only no, but hell no. Okay. And he said, please, just go visit. And I'm like, got it. Yep.
Other questions?
Oh. So what we'll do is I'm going to take that as a cue that we're going to save our questions for the reception that we're going to hold out afterwards, because after all, we'll spawn the conversations down here, but hopefully continue afterwards. So let me close out today's session by thanking folks. Thanking folks first who support us, the Social Enterprise Goizueta Initiative. So the Dean's Office and Rob Zanjan out there, thanks very much for the support you give us. And also at the university level, the Office of University and Community Partnerships. So we want to thank them. Obviously, you've got to thank the people who participated in the conversation. So thanks to Dr. Magee for being here, but also for allowing the business school into the creativity dialogue. And I'm hoping there's going to be more to come. And thanks obviously to Bob and Ross, as you alluded. I know you're all busy. I know that the trips were canceled and plans were changed, so you could be here today. And I also know that are you motorcycling down to New Orleans?
If Bob had his way, we'd be motorcycling. We are loading into a car and driving all the way down there.
All right. So as a token of our appreciation, I don't know, if I can just take a moment to kind of comment on something that we're doing that's a little bit kind of creative and kind of cool. We got a program down in Nicaragua that we're trying to go and kind of be relational with. And so one of the things that we meet when folks down there, we met this author named Julio. And he's just very, very good. So we thought usually when we have events like this, we give like monogram pens and stuff like this. But what we commissioned a series of mugs, and these are Julio's designs that are special, for us. And the cool thing about it is we asked for 5. Right? So what actually happens is folks like you, that cereal boxes collect all 5. Right? So this is basically a signal that you have 4 more coming. You have 4 more invitations. And just to let you know on the authenticity, they were actually wrapped in Nicaraguan newsprint. Down there. Is
that coffee or beer?
Well, another kind of part of our relationship down there we build around us, we've got this most excellent coffee farm that we're down there. And I won't go into all the details, but they're doing amazing work. And their plans as a for-profit coffee farm are as much, kind of how can we make the region of Los Robles more attractive because of our success, and ultimately we'll be getting more of this kind of stuff on a regular basis, but this is the coffees that are coming from down there. So I guess it does signal us a need a coffee mug.
Well, you got something for us, so I have to share.
No, you guys are on your own. And just
wow.
Different design, of course.
So
but anyway, thank you very much.
Great.
And
Thank
so
you.
if I could just ask you So just so you know, my co-conspirator Ella Williams has been dutifully guarding the wine and the food out there, and so it's the break for the day. So please join us in the Coca-Cola Commons.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Lots more topics to talk.
The preceding program is copyrighted by Emory University.